Now, we must tell you in our analysis, we do not make the errors that others do. Anytime you make an analysis of an oppressed people in any aspect of their life and you leave out the enemy, you will never come to a correct analysis. On the contrary, you will blame the oppressed for all of their problems. Therefore, we tell you from the very beginning, we've never taken the line of others that the biggest problem that we have is we ourselves. No, our biggest problem is our enemy, capitalism, and it must be destroyed. We say any analysis you make of an oppressed people must include the oppressor, otherwise you will come up with an incorrect analysis blaming the oppressed for their position of oppression.
On June 25th, 2023, I gave One Piece another shot after dropping it during the peak of the pandemic in 2020 when I got to the Surf Village arc. And now, almost 2 years later, on April 24th, 2025, I officially caught up on One Piece. And I have some thoughts on the world government, the Marines, and Monkey D. Garp specifically, because, well, Garp is trash. And that's being nice, because honestly, he's a bootlicker. To summarize briefly, One Piece has existed as a published manga in Shonen Jump since 1997, and is a story which starts out with Goldie Roger, who was infamously known as the Pirate King, and willingly let himself be executed by the world government. On his execution chamber, he revealed to the world that he found the greatest treasure in the world, the One Piece. See, you get it? The One Piece, that's the, yeah. This sent the whole world into a frenzy that brought about the Great Pirate Era, because pirates across the globe were inspired by Roger, so they went out to sea and traveled the Grand Line to find the One Piece. Years later, the One Piece has still not been found, so Monkey D. Luffy embarks on an adventure with his crew members that he finds along the way to find the One Piece and become the Pirate King, not to rule the seas, but to become freer than anyone else. The more interesting thing about Luffy is that he might not claim to be a hero, but on his journey to become the Pirate King, he frees islands from oppressive dictators, settles colonial systems, and even starts a war with the world government just to save his friend that he cares for deeply. This sets him apart from other pirates in the One Piece world, because instead of not saving these islands for selfish reasons, he liberates them in the name of justice and food at the end, which honestly might be the greatest bartering system of all time. I'm so interested in One Piece, not only because its length and story is sort of an enigma within the shonen genre, but because I believe that anime can act as a powerful cultural medium for social and political ideas, organizing, and activism. I mean, there's a reason why the Straw Hat Pirate flag has been waved at multiple Palestinian protests, and why they're viewed as a symbol for liberation amongst fans of anime across the globe.
Literally, the most dangerous thing you can do during an empire in decay is to smile without permission. It's to laugh out loud. It's to love loudly. It's to imagine more. Because revolution isn't just burning shit down. I need y'all to get it. It's gardening while it burns. It's building joy in the rubble. It's dancing on the cracked floor of a failing world and saying, you're not going to take my ability to feel alive. That's sacred. That's resistance. Joy was never a distraction.
I even have the Straw Hat Pirate and some pirate logos tatted on my arm and chest because of what they represent in the series. So it's safe to say that I'm completely One Piece pilled from Hody's energy steroids and the pickups I get from Chopper D Plug. And with One Piece, there are a myriad of topics you can discuss, from Doflamingo's dad embodying white liberalism, Luffy utilizing a collectivist framework to achieve his dream of becoming the Pirate King, to how Kaido and Orochi use poverty as a tool to enact violence on the people of Wano, which eerily mirrors the American base and superstructure. I've discussed these topics on my TikTok page as I've chronicled my journey through arcs such as Dressrosa, Wano, and Egghead. But one character that interests me the most is Monkey D. Garp, who is related to Luffy and who I view as morally bankrupt for the actions that he takes in this story. Garp is unable to make a critical conscious analysis of who his enemy truly is within One Piece, and becomes a powerless subject because of this. So my goal is to uncover how his mindset mirrors our real-life social world, how he exists in the context of a larger systemic problem, and reveal how critical consciousness pedagogy can be applied to One Piece to increase people's political literacy. Now, when I was in my film studies classes at Morehouse College, we deliberated and learned tons about spectatorship and respecting the audience that'll view your work. So I sent out a survey poll of where my audience is at in their own One Piece journey, and the overwhelming majority of y'all haven't started One Piece yet or aren't caught up on the story so far. Maybe this video will inspire y'all to get to Egghead, shit, possibly Elbaf. Maybe it won't. Hell, some folks have jokingly said that I should leave y'all behind as punishment for not being locked into the series by now. But instead of acting like y'all aren't integral to the filmmaking process, I'm gonna practice what I've learned and will make this a spoiler-free One Piece video. There will be no deep dives into certain arcs of One Piece, and I'll talk around any major spoilers so that your enjoyment of this series won't be ruined by anything I blurt out before you catch up. So, with that being said, here's the individual micro view. When I say that Garp is a bootlicker, I'm referring to the fact that he's a government lapdog, but I don't want to base this off of his optics alone. Because Garp wears a dog hat, and his marine ship is fashioned with a dog alongside a bone and collar as its figurehead, this can be used as an argument to state that Oda is using this imagery to show that Garp is a government lapdog. Now, while that might be true, especially since it's the very first image we see of Garp, I actually want to go deeper into Garp's ideological reasons for joining the Marines and why he continues to stay with them. But first, some context for the unaware and for my mom who thought that One Piece was Dragon Ball Z. Garp is currently 78 years old and joined the Marines in One Piece at 22 years old, which means that he's been with them for 56 years. And the Marines are the military forces of the world government that have maintained dominant control over the Blue Planet for 800 years. This Blue Planet is what the global One Piece is known as, and it's divided into the East Blue, South Blue, West Blue, North Blue, Grand Line, Calm Belt, and Red Line regions. In the beginning of the story, the hierarchy ranges from the Gorosei, who are the leaders of the world government, to the captains of the Marines, and Garp is a vice admiral within this world government system. It's important to state that Garp is also known as the hero of the Marines, who, even in his old age, continues to fight against the pirates as they're against everything that he stands for. He likes order over anarchy, and some might say that this is a noble act, as he saves various islands from pirates that are the opposite of people like Shanks and Luffy, which does have some merit to it. Some might say that Garp is the person who respects the establishment, has respect for order, and ultimately wants to change the system from within because he has this huge sense of justice. This is also why I believe Garp is part of the Marines, because the Marines claim to have justice as their main moral principle, and this can be indicated through their motto, their iconography, and the actions the Marines take in the story to achieve order and justice. But here's the issue. They believe in absolute justice, in which the ends justify the means, but this is mainly determined on whatever the world government tells them to do. So when the world government tells the Marines to stop pirates from freeing slaves that the Celestial Dragons own, to the Marines that's justice. When the world government tells the Marines to utilize collective punishment and genocide if even one person on an island does research on the Void Century, which would uncover how the world government came into power, to the Marines, that's justice. And if you question these actions, you're told to shut up and do as you're told. To add on, Cypher Pool is a secret organization associated with the world government rather than the Marines. And they also utilize guilt by association to kill anyone they come across, which they view as justice because even though they harass and kill innocent people, they're stopping the pirates, which justify whatever murderous actions they commit, because ultimately they're following the world government's orders. But to be fair, not everyone in the Marines uses absolute justice as their framework for being part of the Marines, even though it's the main tagline they go under. In a Coast Cooper's research article on pirates, justice, and global order in the anime One Piece, They state that One Piece offers a popular representation of these dilemmas by the different attitudes higher-ranking officers of the Marines take in their acts for preserving order and making compromises on justice. The way One Piece introduces this dilemma is through different approaches individual high-ranking officials of the Marines take towards this dilemma, with each higher-ranking Marine having its own personality, not simply just being order-following automations. In fact, one of the elements of the story that creates its richness is that characters of One Piece are not one-dimensional, standing for either good or bad, but are complex characters, avoiding the excessive Machiavellian depictions and simplistic characters that are so typical in numerous Hollywood blockbusters. Characters of One Piece are complex and continuously evolve, sometimes shifting from right to wrong. In the Marines, everyone has their own sense of justice. Some are beholden to the mission at all costs, and some ignore orders and even leave the Marines if the orders they're given don't align with what their view of justice is. But Garp exists in this weird gray area, and that's the most interesting part about him. He's a vice admiral only because he refuses to be promoted as an admiral, because admirals are required to be lapdogs for the Celestial Dragons, and Garp doesn't like the Celestial Dragons because they're overly arrogant, obnoxious, and what else are they? I'm forgetting it. It's on the tip of my tongue. Oh yeah, they're slave owners within the world of One Piece. Also, because he has the title of the hero of the Marines, he's able to ignore orders and use Marine resources in any way he sees fit. So really, he has more freedom within the Marines than anyone else who chooses to be a cog within the Marine machine. And it's important to note that one of the main reasons why Garp gets this privilege is because he's not weak whatsoever and is arguably the strongest Marine and is definitely one of the top 10 strongest characters within One Piece. For the longest time, Garp's strength was unknown, and therefore he was considered to be a fraud strength-wise because everyone in the story would hype him up as the hero of the Marines, but we as the audience never saw any feats that justified this title. This frame of logic is commonly known as agenda piece within the One Piece fandom, and is devoid of any facts to push an overly positive or overly negative agenda on characters within One Piece, especially if we, the audience, haven't seen them do much of anything within the story that justifies the hype they receive from characters within One Piece. And trust me, I'm not bashing it, because it is truly one of the funniest things that has ever come out of the One Piece fandom. Imagine getting caught up on 1,000 episodes, 1,000 chapters, and you go to the fandom and the fandom isn't funny. Nigga, that would suck. You know what I'm saying? And that's exactly why Agenda Piece is so hilarious to me. Because you can get caught up and then go into this whole other realm of One Piece. There's Theory Piece, there's Agenda Piece, there's actual One Piece. And it's all hilarious and it's so intriguing, right? From Dragon looking east and not doing shit, to Mihawk painting his sword black, Shanks eating the rat fruit model snitch, Blackbeard having the best off-screen hockey, Akanu going toe-to-toe with Dragon for having the best Des hockey, Zoro having asthma, and my current favorite, which is the God Usopp agenda. To my folks that are caught up on the story, they're on Elbaf, and they're reading the manga, man, listen, fuck what these new chapters talking about. I don't give a fuck. Y'all niggas are impatient, and you're clowning my boy. You're clowning him right now. Oh, for sure right now. But just wait. Y'all niggas is impatient. You're not standing 10 toes down on the agenda. You have to believe. Usopp's weapon will eat a devil fruit. And he will master advanced observation hockey in Elbaf, bro. You have to believe in the agenda. You have to stand 10 toes down on it, because maintaining the agenda is our top priority. Have we learned nothing?
I don't care what I read. It's about the agenda. It's not about what you think. It's not about reading comprehension. It's not about the story. It's about agenda. When will you guys understand that?
Anyways, I say all this to say that it is well established that the hype Garp receives isn't fraudulent, and it's confirmed that he truly is like that. We've observed that his punches can destroy an entire island through his use of the hockey power system in One Piece, and it was previously stated from Goldie Roger himself that he went toe-to-toe with Garp multiple times. And the true gag is that Garp has done all this and more without a devil fruit, with essentially gives you superpowers in One Piece. And to that point, he doesn't have a single weapon, right? Like, he uses his bare fist alone to fight the strongest characters in One Piece. So there's no question that we have verifiable proof that he's not weak and powerless. This level of strength also makes the excuses people make for Garp meaningless, especially when you consider that Garp was and currently is stronger than Sengoku, but was held back by Sengoku when Garp was highly reconsidering his position in the Marines and fighting back against them to save his family instead of letting their execution occur. It's really a if he wanted to, he would situation, and in Garp's case, he was strong enough to get Sengoku off of him, and he was strong enough to proactively intervene towards freeing his own family. But he chose not to. And this knowledge comes with its own set of problems, because if he's this strong, then why did he let the world government kill someone who was part of his family and not take any action to stop it? Why doesn't he leave the Marines and end the rule of the Celestial Dragons if he hates them so much that he refuses to become an admiral? And why doesn't he become the change that he ultimately wants to see? Because we know he can. He has enough social capital, physical strength, and hockey abilities to leave the Marines, stop working for the world government, and be someone as powerful as Luffy, Fisher Tiger, or Dragon, who don't use the Master's tools to dismantle the Master's house, and craft their own tools to make the radical changes they want to see. And some would argue that Garp is doing this currently by being part of the SWORD organization, who aren't attached to the traditional Marine hierarchy and act independently of the Marines. But the issue with that is not only does SWORD still work for the world government, they also still operate on behalf of the Marines. So all they really did was resign themselves from the standard Marine command structure and nothing else. Like, when it comes to Garp and the Marines, I love their lack of energy. Like, go girl, give us nothing. Garp can easily leave the Marines entirely and start his own organization with Kobe, Hemplo, and other Marines who are part of SWORD and continually disagree with orders they receive from the world government. Garp doesn't even have to be a pirate and could join Dragon in his revolutionary army to fight against the Celestial Dragons. And he could have saved his own family from execution if he teamed up with Luffy's allies during that altercation. But Garp didn't do that. He refuses to leave the Marines and chose his job over his own family because he's a government lapdog. He might claim to hate the Celestial Dragons for being slave masters, but won't take direct action against them or free the slaves under their boot. And while he's silent right now, he was still willing to take orders from a world government he knew engaged in genocide, ethnic cleansing, systemic racism, enslavement, human experimentation, mass torture, and mass human and species trafficking. Hell, a good amount of pirates in One Piece are not good people who commit their own set of heinous crimes. But for the most part, pirates don't engage in state-sanctioned violence and aren't able to act with impunity. And even when they are able to act with impunity, it's because they're working alongside the world government. The world government, Cypher Pool, and the Marines only face consequences if they don't follow specific world government orders. Not because they kill innocents to stop pirates who rebel against the world government's genocidal tendencies. And this is the faction that Garp chooses to be part of. He's a cog in the machine who has a warped sense of justice that is rooted in a misunderstanding of how to make radical change possible. And this is why he's unable to make a critical conscious analysis of who his enemy is. Because it shouldn't be the pirates alone, but the entire structure of the world government and the systems of inequalities that they produced for 800 years. And I believe that this works for the story of One Piece. Because Garp cares more about maintaining balance, order, and justice than protecting his family suffers. And Garp tries to make up for it through saving Kobe only because Kobe is the future of the Marines and can continue to maintain balance, order, and justice once Garp passes on. Because while it is true that Garp's family is full of crash dummies who will die over your daddy jokes, Garp never needed his family's permission to save them. And this is especially true because Kobe didn't ask to be saved, but Garp proactively intervened regardless. Through his constant alignment with the oppressive world government, he found himself stuck between a rock and a hard place. The Rock being his willingness to be a government lapdog since he's been with the Marines for 56 years, and The Hard Place being his warped philosophy of justice, which is why he joined and continues to be with the Marines. And his choice to not proactively intervene in that entire debacle really cements that Garp is an ideological fraud, because instead of becoming an empowered subject who is able to recognize the systems of oppression around them and learn how to fight back against those systems, he let himself become a powerless subject through restraining himself to be physically and mentally weak in order to stay with the Marines as they carry out their false and state-sanctioned oppressive sense of justice. Now, some might say that this analysis of Garp is not warranted because Garp is only playing his role and is only doing his job. Now, where have I heard this before? Oh, yeah! So, here's the macro, or the systemic view. In Louis Althusser's On the Reproduction of Capitalism Ideology and Ideological State Apparatuses, he details a Marxist view of structure, articulated by an economic base and superstructure. This economic base is, quote, the unity of the productive forces and the relations of production. The superstructure comprises two levels or instances, which is the political legal level and the ideological level. And this superstructure is best known in Marxist theory as the repressive state apparatus and the ideological state apparatus. The repressive state apparatus is public and includes institutions such as the police, army, prisons, courts, and the government because they operate and maintain dominant control through physical violence. The ideological state apparatus is private and includes institutions such as religion, education, the family, politics, trade unions, communications such as TV and the press, and culture. The main distinction between these apparatuses is that one operates through physical violence while the other operates through ideology, but they work in tandem to make individuals obedient subjects who will join the police state and military under the guise of maintaining balance, order, and justice, when in reality, they're controlling oppressed people through brute force to benefit the capitalist interests of the rich and elite.
The tragedy of the capitalist system is to be found in the fact that it takes human beings who think in fact they're working for just ends when in fact they're working for unjust ends. But here, by doing this, the system clearly demonstrates to us that human nature itself is for humanity. Clearly, even when they come to take the youth and send them to Vietnam, they don't come before the youth and tell them the truth. We're going to rape the country. On the contrary, they lie to them. They tell them we're fighting for democracy. They tell them we're fighting for justice. They say we're fighting against communism, which is bad, and dictatorship, and we're fighting to bring freedom. And this is why the people are mobilized, because the people will be mobilized to fight for justice. And look at the vicious system, lying to the people, sending the youth to believe he's really fighting for democracy, when in fact this youth is fighting against democracy. It's a backward and stupid system. It has to be overthrown.
In our society, we've seen how ideology was used to manufacture consent for oppressive wars like the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, and the war in Vietnam that Vietnamese people rightfully call the resistance war against America to save the nation. And these apparatuses are depicted in One Piece to a T, as the world government, Cypher Pool, and the Marines represent the repressive state apparatus who work in tandem with the ideological state apparatus to make individuals in One Piece obedient subjects who will join the Marines under the guise of maintaining balance, order, and justice, when in reality, they're controlling oppressed people through brute force to serve the world government in the capitalist interests of the Celestial Dragons. This is why solely talking about Garp is an insufficient analysis, because while he's definitely part of the problem, he exists in a wider context, or more so, a wider system of oppression that tons more contribute to, like Sengoku, Akainu, Kizaru, Kobe, and Smoker. This is also why they're just doing their job talking point falls flat, because it's an anti-intellectual opinion that acts as if their actions exist in a vacuum, when in reality, their actions support an oppressive superstructure. Because the problem isn't just with Garp, it's the entire structure of the world government, Cypher Pool, and the Marines that produce people like Garp. Just like how in our society, the problem isn't just Michael E. Langley, who is the commander over AFRICOM, which is the US's neo-colonial project in Africa. It isn't just Linda Thomas Greenfield raising her hand on behalf of the US at the UN, using our empire's power to deny a ceasefire in Gaza. It isn't just the Clintons being a repackaged version of traditional American slave masters when Bill Clinton was the governor of Arkansas. And it isn't just Trump as he continues to use ICE as the modern-day Gestapo they always have been, and uses a photo from the ongoing genocide occurring in the Democratic Republic of the Congo to push white supremacist propaganda about a fake white genocide occurring in South Africa.
This is proof that there is actually a genocide going on in Congo right now, as if we needed any proof. These victims spoke from the beyond, and they spoke to the world. This is proof that we cannot escape Congo. The world cannot escape its culpability in what's been happening in Congo for the past 200 years. Congo should not be brought to the world's attention through this kind of gimmick and tomfoolery. It is a great dishonor, disgrace, and it's disgusting. All good and moral people of the world must stand on the Congolese people's side in a meaningful way. Mobilize, organize wherever you are, in whatever capacity. We must do it.
The problem lies with these individuals for sure, there's no denying that. But the problem also lies with the superstructure that produces these individuals. It's not one or the other, it's both. And this is why currently people have such a half-baked analysis in regards to people like Trump, because they'll rightfully complain about his actions, but won't put it into a larger context, so they're unable to make an accurate analysis of who their enemy really is. Because Trump didn't come up with any of the actions on the laundry list of his fascist agenda by himself. It was his donors. It was every author listed on the Project 2025 document, the billionaire class that supports him. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but you get what I mean? If this system isn't dismantled, and if a different economic system that works to benefit the people isn't put into place, then this country will continue to produce people like Trump, and we'll be stuck in an everlasting cycle of hell filled with old-ass white men who have stage 16 prostate cancer and stay in their political seats for 800 years. Just like the Gora say. Ah, fuck me, I just made the whole connection. Stupid. This is also why when people argue that Garp is trying to dismantle the system from within, it's extremely flawed. Because sure, they might allow you to temporarily beat you at your own game, but they'll never enable you to bring about genuine change. And you'll end up supporting what you claim to be against. Just Pete Cory Booker, for instance. He claims to be pro-democracy and will do a 25-hour speech in support of it, but takes hundreds of thousands in AIPAC money. Text messages AIPAC's president back and forth like teenagers, his words, not mine, and said he would cut off his right hand for Israel, even though they're an apartheid state, and put Palestinians in a constant status of Jim Crow, which is the exact opposite of anything resembling a democracy.
One of the very interesting things about being here, I will say, is on the one hand, I have, among the Palestinians, seen all sorts of analogs to our struggle, but I will tell you that I've also seen like an alternative timeline, if that makes any sense, for Black Americans in watching the behavior of the Israeli state. I have been shocked by the simplicity of the brutality, the inhumanity, and oppression. I think there is great temptation when you are oppressed and you have been victimized and you have been brutalized and you have been subject to pogroms, genocide, and taking the tools of those who have oppressed you and using them and thinking that is the only way to secure your liberation. And it has to be avoided. It's not freedom. It's not freedom.
Like I'm saying, these systems are nasty. In this state that I live in alone, in Georgia, Adriana Smith is currently a brain-dead Black woman being used as an incubator because of our laws on abortion. Like, this is legit, ongoing human experimentation that Black women have been experiencing for centuries at this point. Like, the superstructure is wicked. And it'll swallow you whole and turn you into a powerless subject, as we've seen with Garp and as we've seen with the individuals in our real world who have a warped sense of justice and therefore aren't able to bring about radical change, genuine change. That is one of the many problems we face today, and is why critical consciousness pedagogy is so important, especially as pseudo-intellectualism and principled anti-intellectualism continues to rise. Niggas gotta be willing to mix their informal education with the formal education and do the knowledge, but not that esoteric nonsense. Because we need more empowered subjects. And through analyzing One Piece in this manner, I believe that it'll foster an environment for people to feel powerful rather than powerless. But more thoughts on this after this short ad break.
Now go ahead and send me money, yeah! Money, cash.
Bro, they need to put cocaine back in fucking Coca-Cola cans. And hear me out. So, here's what critical consciousness pedagogy entails. In Sean Carlton's Drawn to Change, Comics and Critical Consciousness, he details Paulo Freire's theory on conscientization, which is popularly known as critical consciousness. Carlton continues as he states that conscientization does not refer to one's mere attainment of an alternative or critical consciousness. It is also a pedagogical method. In Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Freire defines conscientization as an active process whereby people learn to perceive social, political, and economic contradictions and to take action against oppressive elements of reality. This transformational pedagogy inspires learners to see themselves as empowered subjects of history, capable of acting to improve their own lives and working with others to change their world for the better. Comics such as Art Spiegelman's Mouse, A Survivor's Tale, Gord Hill's The 500 Years of Resistance comic book, and the illustrated adaptation of Howard Zinn's book, A People's History of the United States, are able to marry print and visual representations to critique politics and ideals that aren't discussed in mainstream media. We can observe this especially with Mouse, because in the text, Spiegelman shows a flashback of his father experiencing genocidal conditions in the Holocaust. And when we cut to the present, his father is being overtly discriminatory against a hitchhiker only because he's black. And in his words, it's not even to compare the Shortversers and the Jews. By the way, that Shortverser term is basically the N-word with the hard R used against us in the Yiddish language. If you haven't picked up on it already, we really aren't joking when we say that anti-blackness is global. Like, these niggas got black on the brain for real. Anyways, this shows that Spiegelman was able to capture how experiencing marginalization because of your identity doesn't lead to an inherently radicalizing experience. You can go through something as dehumanizing as the Holocaust and still come out the other side anti-black. And this is interesting because Spiegelman was able to show this through the medium of comics. And with this knowledge, we can see that comics have the pedagogic potential to not only increase literacy amongst the people, but also increase critical consciousness amongst the people. One Piece also has that similar pedagogic potential and can inspire people to become empowered subjects, especially because unlike popular mediums such as film and television, comics require much more from their readers to establish basic meaning. There's a level of textual and visual literacy that must be used to understand meaning in the story that's being told, which is why comics utilize techniques such as subject to subject and action to action transitions to contribute to the textual and visual language in comic storytelling. And even though comics aren't perfect pedagogic resources, they do have the liberatory potential to critically engage with the past and present to be able to struggle for a better future. And that's what One Piece is to me. It's not a perfect manga or anime, and Oda, in typical mangaka fashion, is questionable. The goal of this video was to examine Garp as a character to discover a systematic issue within the repressive state apparatus of One Piece and make these necessary connections apparent to push back against the continued rise of principled anti-intellectualism and inspire people to become empowered subjects. If you're able to analyze a property like One Piece in a proper way, then you'll be able to increase your own political literacy. And this goes for other mangas and animes that I've seen, from Beastars, Code Geass to Vinland Saga. And this is why I believe that anime can act as a powerful cultural medium for social and political ideas, organizing, and activism, because they have the potential to be a good pedagogical resource, and not in the potential man way either. Because no matter how you chalk it up, you can't run away from reading, because you can't feel free as a human being without it, because literacy is freedom, and political literacy shows you how to struggle for freedom.
I remember when I gave my book to my father, I dedicated a book of mine, Power and the Powerless, to my father. I said, to my father with my love. Gave him a copy of the book. He opened it up, looked at that. He'd only gone to the 7th grade. He was a son of an immigrant, a working class Italian. And he opens the book and he starts looking through it, and he gets misty-eyed, very misty-eyed. And I thought it's because he was so touched that his son had dedicated a book to him. That wasn't the reason. He looks up to me and says, I can't read this, kid. I said, that's okay, Dad, neither can the students. I mean, that's not something, I mean, don't worry about that. I wrote it for you. I mean, it's your book, and you don't have to read it. You know, it's a very complicated book, academic book. He says, yeah, I can't read this book. And the defeat that man felt. That's what illiteracy is about. That's what the joy of literacy programs is. That's why in Nicaragua you got people walking proud now for the first time. They were animals before. They weren't allowed to read. They weren't taught to read.
So instead of wanting to stay ignorant or reading the 48 Laws of Power, you could read something that'll actually enrich you. And it doesn't have to be One Piece, but let it be something that inspires you to become an empowered subject. We need less people like Garp in our world. People who think they're powerless and therefore make themselves powerless. We want to build a future where empowered people have the self-determination and material conditions to live, struggle, and create freedom for themselves. Because if not, then we'll continue to live in a sadistic world where those deemed unnecessary by the state are weeded out and eliminated. So let's continue to make accurate analyses, know who our enemy is, and fight for the freedom that we so desperately yearn for and deserve. I know you'll see the cosplay though. Like, this shit really tight. So hold on. Wait. Real. Shit. You see that? You see the thing? It'd be like. Wait. Shit. Bah. Like, hold on. I'm really like. Just aura farmer. Just, you know what I'm saying? We gotta tact. We gotta real. Hold on. Sambo. Sambo. I'm crying. I really love, like, hey. This is so tight. I got this shit on MomoCon, y'all. Like, this is amazing. I got the full cosplay. Stop playing with it. What YouTuber is doing it like me? No one. On my soul. Ah, shit. Wait. They be like, oh my soul. I'm really feeling like law in this motherfucker. No cat, no real. Whatever. What it be like? He be like, he does like the little shh. Oh, hold on. Injection shot. Stupid ass. Oh shit. I put that shit in the wrong way. Put that shit back.